The internet is about to be destroyed as we know it in the European Union. At least that's what a lot of people are saying. The reality is it's kind of a complicated issue, but there's something called Article 13. And the point of today's video, if you haven't heard, well, now you're going to hear about it. But a lot of people are acting like this really is the apocalypse for the internet, and the deadline for this article is coming up soon. But what is Article 13, and what are people really saying about it? More importantly, whatever this bill is, will it actually destroy the internet? But before we get started, head over to youtube.com/timcastnews. There'll be a little button here, and subscribe, because this is where my live streams will be from now on because of a guideline strike on my main channel. And if you really want to support my work, go to patreon.com/timcast, click Become a Patron, and choose whatever amount is comfortable for you to help support my work. Yesterday, I saw this video from Computing Forever. The EU is about to destroy the internet, #delete Article 13. In this video, Dave Cullen goes through a bunch of the claims made against Article 13 and why it's so dangerous. Now, it is a complicated issue and it hasn't been covered in the press a whole lot. So first, I want to go over what some of the activists are saying about this. From the website saveyourinternet.eu, they said, "Don't let the EU break our internet. Tell your MEP to save it before 20th of June. On 20-21 June, the European Parliament will vote on the copyright directive. Members of the Parliament are the only ones that can stand in the way of bad copyright legislation. Tell them you need them to protect your internet against surveillance and censorship machines." This website is overly simplified, but they say that it threatens blogging platforms, gamers that live stream, discussion platforms, the sharing of memes and parodies, the ability to link, the ability to remix, and it threatens code sharing platforms. The website says the European Commission and the Council want to destroy the internet as we know it and allow big companies to control what we see and do online. Should Article 13 of the Copyright Directive proposal be adopted, it would impose widespread censorship of all of the content you share online. The European Parliament is the only one that can step in and save your internet. First of all, when I see a bunch of people waving, signs around that say the end is nigh, I get a little cautious. When I see activist websites that accuse the EU of trying to destroy the internet as we know it, and it's overly simplistic, I get a little cautious. From the website Alfar, Article 13 could destroy the internet as we know it. What is it? Why is it controversial? And what will it mean for memes? Critics of the proposed EU directive on copyright warned that it could censor internet users. The EU has proposed a new directive on copyright encompassing a number of sections that have met with stringent criticism from policy experts and digital rights groups who've decried the potential legislation as a mask for censorship and an end to memes in Europe. Article 13 of the proposal for a directive of the European Parliament and of the Council on Copyright in the Digital Single Market, to give its full name, is an attempt to reshape copyright law for the internet age. It's based around the relationship between copyright holders and online platforms, compelling the latter to enforce tighter regulation over protected content. According to the article, those platform providers should take measures to ensure the functioning of agreements concluded with rights holders for the use of their works or other subject matter, or to prevent the availability on their services of works or other subject matter identified by rights holders through the cooperation with the service providers. The article stipulates that platforms should prevent the availability of protected works, suggesting these ISSPs will need to adopt technology that can recognize and filter work created by someone other than the person uploading it. This could include fragments of music, pictures, and videos. If you've ever been on the internet, you'll know that this remix culture is a key part of how online communities function. The worry is that Article 13 will hinder this and create a type of censorship that ignores nuances in how content can be adopted, quoted, or parodied. In October 16, 2017, the European Digital Rights Association drafted this open letter. It says the European Commission tabled a proposal that would force internet companies that share and store user-generated content, such as video or photo sharing platforms or even creative writing websites, to filter uploads to their services. The signatories argue that the proposal would lead to excessive filtering and deletion of content, while at the same time constantly monitoring users' activity online. These conditions would violate freedom of expression, freedom of information, and also privacy. Therefore, the organizations are asking members of the European Parliament to delete Article 13 from the proposal. Specific highlights say, Article 13 of the proposal on copyright in the digital single market include obligations on internet companies that would be impossible to respect without the imposition of excessive restrictions on citizens' fundamental rights. Article 13 appears to provoke such legal uncertainty that online services will have no other option than to monitor, filter, and block EU citizens' communications if they are to have any chance of staying in business. One of the general arguments is that the proposal is trying to fill the value gap, that people who create intellectual property often can't make money off it because things are stolen or remixed or something like that. And the idea here would be that all of these services have to track what people are uploading to make sure it's not infringing on other people. And there are arguments that this could violate fair use as we understand it today, and this would end memes, which often take an existing piece of intellectual property, slightly change it because it's funny or interesting, and then reshare it. And then you have to consider, what if someone's quoting a news source? I actually just did that. Would that be a copyright violation? Well, in the United States, it's fair use. But many people fear that Article 13 would take those protections away from people in the EU. But not only that, it would require companies to actually monitor what people are doing online in order to actually regulate this behavior. An article from Lexology.com talks about a series of panels on copyright reform. It says, in one panel, they discussed controversial Article 13 of the draft. Under the new provision, online content sharing service providers shall either get authorization for the content uploaded by its users or filter it. Licensing could be achieved through umbrella agreements obtained from collecting societies. However, it will be nearly impossible for platform operators to get cross-border licenses for the entire EU territory. Filtering should be effective and proportionate, however. The decision will be left to the industry, and this could be at the expense of the public interest. The complaint and redress mechanism represents a long and uncertain path for platform users, so the industry will be the decision maker in the matter unless member states, quote, endeavor to establish mechanisms to facilitate the assessment of the effectiveness and proportionality of these measures, unquote. First, let me stress that this is particularly complicated, and I encourage anyone who's interested in this or worried about it to actually start digging into it themselves and not to take my assessment as law or 100% fact because, again, I'm not an expert. It's very complicated. But the reason I'm doing this video is because I want to make sure people know about it so that you can figure out what you think should be done. But based on my understanding so far, it seems like they want to create essentially a YouTube copyright system, but for everything. Think about how bad YouTube is with copyright strikes. Companies will just falsely claim copyright on you because they can, and then hope they can take your revenue away from that product you created. Well, if you create a system that blankets everything, imagine now that affecting Twitter and Facebook or your blog. Someone coming to your blog and saying, oh, you plagiarized me, that's my IP, and then what happens? What's going to happen for your website then when you have to abide by these regulations? So then the other question I have is, how broad do they define user-generated content? Sure, on Twitter, you post things and that's considered user-generated content. But what about a website like Wix.com? That's a personal website development service where you can design a website very easily. Are they hosting user-generated content too? To what extent is user-generated content? And will domain name providers and service providers and other website companies have to regulate what people write on their own websites because it's being hosted on someone else's server? Many people are arguing there's a potential that companies will just opt to filter your content because they would rather not face penalties. And again, this is in the EU. And I just want to be very careful about extreme claims made by activist organizations because, well, I don't trust very many people. I'm going to be digging into this a lot more, and we're going to figure out exactly what's going on, potentially talk with some experts. But from some of the stuff we've read from various experts, from various institutions, it seems like this could be potentially bad. And look, can I just say it? It's not surprising to hear that old people who don't work on the internet that often misunderstand it and often push policies that are detrimental to the foundation of the internet. I also think you have to consider that this would have a profoundly negative impact on the European economy. And I'm not entirely sure even politicians in Europe want that, so maybe they need to do a little bit more work to determine whether or not this is something they actually want. Alpha R talks about the threat to startups. Quote, why would startups choose to operate under these terms in the EU when they can avoid the problem by setting up a company in jurisdictions with laws better suited to the digital age? Similarly, why would venture capitalists risk investing in new EU companies, which will be hamstrung by a requirement to filter everything once they grow beyond a certain size? So let me know what you think in the comments below. I've done a little bit of research into this and some digging, but it's hard to know exactly what this is. And I just want to say the warning one more time. Be careful about activist organizations making hyperbolic statements. At the same time, there are a lot of organizations calling this out, and there really could be a threat to the internet in Europe. So if you care about what's happening in Europe and you care about internet censorship, you should probably start looking into this. I'll include some links in the description below. But again, comment below and we will keep the conversation going. You can follow me on Twitter @TimCast. Stay tuned, new videos every day at 4 p.m., and I will see you all tomorrow.